The Falklands are cold, wet, and miserable. For most of their history, this rocky archipelago in the South Atlantic has been almost entirely uninhabitable, populated by little more than grass and penguins. Yet in the 1760s, two major global empires decided they desperately needed to own them. French and English explorers both established colonies on the islands exactly 1 year apart, completely unaware of each other's existence until they inevitably stumbled into one another. Spain arrived, pointing to a map line drawn by the Pope assigning them the territory. They bought out the French. Then, as this chart reveals, Spain used their massive naval artillery advantage, ignoring the law, to simply point their cannons and evict the English. This established a pattern for the archipelago. Legal claims and papal lines mattered far less than the presence of a superior navy. By the late 1700s, the American Revolution and other global conflicts forced both empires to focus their attention elsewhere. The islands were abandoned entirely, leaving behind only herds of feral cattle and a single metal plaque left by the British, insisting the territory was still theirs. Decades passed before a newly independent Argentina spotted an opportunity in the vacuum. They granted a merchant named Luis Fernet permission to set up a private trading colony to hunt the feral cattle, eventually appointing him the official governor of the islands. Vernet soon made a fatal miscalculation by seizing American whaling ships and arresting their crews. In swift, overwhelming retaliation, the United States military sailed down to the islands and completely leveled the fledgling colony. Hearing that Argentina had officially claimed the territory by appointing a governor, Britain returned in 1832. They pointed to the plaque they had left behind over half a century prior, brought out their superior naval guns, and kicked the remaining Argentine presence off the island. While Britain spent the next 150 years turning the islands into a quiet sheep farming colony, Argentina maintained its protest, treating the 1832 eviction as an open wound in their national history. Fast forward to 1981, Argentina is now under the control of a brutal military dictatorship led by this man, Leopoldo Galtieri. This line graph shows Argentina's steeply plummeting economic output alongside a sharp rise in domestic unrest. Galtieri's government was failing, and the public was on the verge of revolt. He needed a massive, unifying political distraction to keep his regime in power. He decided to invade the Falklands. It seemed like a safe bet. The British had recently proposed cutting military spending and had already withdrawn their local presence, including the ice patrol vessel HMS Endurance. Galtieri assumed the UK simply wouldn't bother fighting back. The initial strike worked perfectly. 600 Argentine troops landed and quickly overwhelmed the tiny garrison of British Royal Marines stationed there. Back in Buenos Aires, massive unified crowds poured into the streets to celebrate the reclamation of what they called the Malvinas. The invasion provided the immediate unifying distraction Galtieri needed to keep his regime from collapsing. However, the move was a gamble that relied entirely on the assumption that Britain no longer cared about the territory. He underestimated the resolve of British Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher, who had no intention of letting the territory go. Thatcher immediately rejected international pressure to negotiate a handover, declared a strict military exclusion zone around the territory, and prepared for combat. This map illustrates the enormous 8,000-mile supply chain stretching from the UK down to the South Atlantic. To move troops and supplies across that distance, the British military had to requisition civilian cruise ships and container vessels, using Ascension Island as a staging point. Within days, a task force of over 100 ships was mobilized. Thousands of troops sailed south through heavy seas to reclaim the islands. What Galtieri assumed would be a localized land grab had rapidly escalated into a massive test of modern global naval projection. The British struck first at sea. A British nuclear submarine tracked and controversially sank the Argentine cruiser General Belgrano. The heavy loss of life forced the rest of the Argentine Navy to retreat to port, leaving their ground troops without sea support. The Argentine Air Force retaliated fiercely. Using advanced Exocet missiles, their jets carried out devastating bombing raids on the British fleet below, severely damaging several vessels and completely sinking the destroyer HMS Sheffield. Above the fleet, outnumbered British Sea Harriers engaged in relentless dogfights, slowly grinding down the Argentine Air Force to establish air superiority. With the skies highly contested, British ground forces initiated their landings at San Carlos. They formed a precarious beachhead while absorbing constant, intense air bombardment. From the beaches, highly trained Royal Marines and paratroopers began a grueling advance. They marched directly through freezing temperatures, deep mud, and rocky, unforgiving terrain to reach the entrenched Argentine positions. The resistance broke at Goose Green. During a grueling 14-hour battle, outnumbered British forces fought through muddy trenches and rough terrain, ultimately forcing over 900 Argentine conscripts to surrender. By combining specialized infantry tactics with air and naval support, the British systematically dismantled an occupying force that vastly outnumbered them on paper. The British pushed eastward, capturing the high ground around the capital of Stanley. Utterly surrounded and facing naval shelling from offshore, the remaining Argentine forces formally surrendered on June 14th. The 2-month war left hundreds dead on both sides. It also left a lethal physical legacy on the islands, as retreating forces left behind thousands of active landmines scattered right in the middle of penguin habitats. The political consequences were immediate. In Buenos Aires, military defeat led to the total collapse of Galtieri's regime. In Stanley, the returning British forces were welcomed by the islanders as liberators. Despite losing the war, Argentina never formally rescinded its territorial claim, maintaining a tense geopolitical standoff that persists to this day. But the local population made their stance clear. In a 2013 referendum, 99.8% of the islanders voted to remain a British territory. And with recent offshore oil discoveries in the area, the UK has a strong financial incentive to maintain its presence. The long cycle of colonial evictions has transitioned into a new era of entrenchment. That original British plaque is now reinforced by a permanent military presence, a defiant local population, and the prospect of offshore wealth.